Hello, and welcome to the Federal Railroad Administration's Rail Program Delivery video series. I'm Anthony Thomas, and I'm pleased to introduce Jeff Price, a community planner in FRA's Environmental and Corridor Planning Division.
Hello, everyone.
In this video, we'll discuss regional rail planning and the steps involved in documenting the process in a regional rail plan.
Through regional rail planning, FRA convenes groups of states to develop a common, long-term vision for a regional high-performance rail network. The Regional Rail Plan, which documents the regional planning process, looks at the needs and opportunities for rail service and infrastructure 30 to 40 years in the future. The Federal Railroad Administration leads the regional planning process, but we include stakeholders in the states throughout the process.
To achieve the long-term vision, the Regional Rail Plan identifies and describes several attributes of the region's rail network and needs, including existing conditions across the transportation system and projections of future travel demand, opportunities for rail to contribute to regional goals and serve future demand, a vision for high-performance rail within an integrated multimodal transportation system, potential institutional arrangements, financial requirements, and planning and development activities needed to achieve the vision, and a list of future studies needed to build the rail network identified in the vision.
In the regional rail planning process, FRA works with the stakeholders to identify the opportunities for rail within the region, including proposed corridors and service levels. It does not reach the depth and breadth of analysis contained in a Tier 1 environmental impact statement or service development plan. It should, however, help inform the purpose and need and frame the range of alternatives to be analyzed in follow-on NEPA studies.
The vision created in the Regional Rail Plan should identify viable service characteristics for corridors within the network. Those characteristics can inform the identification of alternatives and service planning in Tier 1 NEPA studies. To learn more about service planning, please watch the service planning video in this series. Now, let's dive into the regional rail planning process. Regional rail plans are a key part of FRA's rail planning framework. For more information about the planning framework, visit FRA's website.
As we noted before, FRA initiates and leads regional rail planning in coordination with the states in a particular region. Those states and other entities with an interest in rail form a stakeholder group which remains involved throughout the regional planning process. As funding allows, FRA solicits statements of interest from groups of states which desire to develop regional rail plans.
Having a regional rail plan in place allows FRA to make decisions with each region's vision in mind. In addition, regional rail plans help states to coordinate projects and priorities and make decisions together. So what are the steps in the regional planning process?
There are 5 steps in the regional planning process. Analyze baseline conditions and assess market. Develop a generalized network vision and service plan. Select and prioritize investments. Estimate costs and benefits and identify potential funding. And identify governance strategies.
Let's go through each of these one by one.
Analyze baseline conditions and assess market. First, FRA will consult with the stakeholder group to assess both the baseline conditions and market opportunities for high-performance rail in the region. Then, FRA will take stock of and analyze the regional transportation goals, studies, and priorities for all modes of transportation in the region. Finally, FRA will identify potential corridors and network configurations to be analyzed using the Connect tool. FRA developed the Connect tool to estimate a number of passenger rail performance metrics, including ridership, revenue, and capital operating and maintenance costs. Contact FRA for more information on the Connect tool.
The second step in the regional rail planning process is to develop a generalized network vision and service plan. To do so, FRA will work with stakeholders to create network configurations, which are essentially lines on a map between metro areas, to analyze with the Connect tool. Next, FRA will conduct analysis to identify the ideal characteristics of the proposed rail networks, including frequencies, speeds, and capacities. Finally, FRA will analyze the potential benefits that the planned improvements might have on freight rail and will discuss opportunities to integrate rail with other modes of transportation.
Select and prioritize investments. FRA will develop a map and written description of the proposed regional network. This will include a corridor-by-corridor description of service levels and communities to be served. Next, FRA will work with a stakeholder group to create a prioritization plan for developing and upgrading specific segments of the regional network in a logical order.
Estimate costs and benefits and identify potential funding. The next step is to conduct a high-level benefit cost analysis, or BCA, for the envisioned regional rail network. The BCA is based on the United States Department of Transportation guidance and is a very high-level analysis of the future performance of the network. BCAs can be conducted for each corridor within the network and for the network as a whole. To round out the financial analysis, FRA will take stock of current and potential funding sources, as well as opportunities for private sector participation. This information will inform the next step in the regional planning process.
Identify governance strategies. Developing a multi-state rail network may require a new approach to governance. FRA and the stakeholder group will explore the pros and cons of various governance models. Governance models range from a simple multi-state MOU to a federally created regional rail authority. Governance is complex, and there is no single model that will work for all regions. Therefore, FRA and the states will work throughout the regional planning process to identify the institutional, financial, and regulatory structures necessary to plan, fund, develop, operate, and maintain the envisioned system.
Once you have gone through the 5 steps in the regional rail planning process, you now have a regional rail plan and vision. The process provides a regional perspective early in the planning process and helps states work toward a common goal. Now that we've gone over the regional rail planning process, let's dive into an example. The first regional rail plan that FRA developed with a group of states was the Southwest Multi-State Rail Planning Study, commonly referred to as the Southwest Study. FRA led this regional rail planning effort as a pilot and completed it in September 2014. It covered the core states of Arizona, California, and Nevada, as well as Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. The Southwest Study was the first time that stakeholders analyzed multiple rail corridors as a network instead of individually. The study showed that the network approach would boost region-wide ridership and revenue while reducing capital, operations, and maintenance costs.
There were a number of key tasks that the FRA and other organizations conducted to develop the Southwest Study. The team synthesized state, local, and private transportation plans and proposals, then identified relevant topics as they relate to multi-state network planning. For intercity corridors that had not yet been studied, the team generated conceptual planning information. The team also brought stakeholders together to work through challenges and came to consensus on a common preliminary vision for high-performance rail in the Southwest. The stakeholders provided valuable input on transportation network connectivity, capacity and enhancements, and institutional and governance agreements.
Those involved learned a number of important lessons in creating the Southwest Study. They found that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to governance. They also learned the importance of providing a clear definition of study purpose and potential outcomes, as well as incorporating other modes of transportation into the process. They also found that in-person workshops with the stakeholders were very effective in encouraging discussion that ultimately led to more information sharing and developing relationships. These relationships helped states coordinate their rail plans and projects with one another. In-person workshops also had the effect of leaving stakeholders engaged, informed, and excited to build consensus and move forward.
The Southwest Study was the first regional rail plan, but it's not the last. The FRA intends to create a regional rail plan for each of the 10 regions throughout the United States. The Southwest Study now provides the opportunity for member states in the region to adopt the findings and incorporate them into their state rail plans. They also have the option to create a regional governance framework. They can also use the Southwest Study to incorporate relevant studies, corridors, and projects into their state plans to ensure federal grant eligibility. You can download the Southwest study by visiting the FRA webpage on your screen.
Let's talk about the roles and responsibilities for conducting regional rail planning. As we mentioned earlier, FRA is responsible for leading any regional rail planning effort, but it works closely with agencies and stakeholders in the region throughout the process.
There are a number of stakeholders who need to be included in the planning process. A good way to ensure stakeholders are involved is to form a stakeholder group. While it may be difficult to agree on all the issues, it is important for the regional planning process to consider multiple stakeholder perspectives.
Some of the stakeholders in regional rail planning include state departments of transportation and/or rail authorities, metropolitan planning organizations, railroads and railroad associations, environmental groups and community organizations, and transit agencies.
It's important to carefully balance the representation of geography, agency, and interest area when inviting stakeholders to participate in the stakeholder group.
The stakeholders participate in workshops to share their ideas and provide information on background and baseline conditions. FRA recommends that stakeholder group meetings be held in person whenever possible to encourage the sharing of ideas.
FRA and the stakeholder group will work together to develop a regional rail plan that reflects the stakeholders' vision for rail in the region.
Now that we've learned about regional rail planning, let's take a quick quiz to review. Question 1. True or false? A regional rail plan includes a similar depth of analysis as a Tier 1 environmental impact statement.
False. While a regional rail plan can help prioritize certain corridors for follow-up NEPA studies, it does not go into the same level of detail as a Tier 1 EIS.
Question 2. Which of the following is a benefit of a regional network approach to planning? A. Boost system-wide ridership and revenue. B. Reduce capital costs. C. Reduce operations and maintenance costs. Or D. All of the above.
The answer is D. There are many benefits to taking a regional network approach to planning.
Question 3. If you wanted to complete a regional rail study in your region, how should you get started?
To begin the regional rail planning process, the best place to start would be by contacting your regional planner at FRA. Also, be on the lookout for notices from the FRA on opportunities to develop new regional rail plans. By taking a regional approach to planning, FRA engages stakeholders to create a long-term vision for rail in a group of states. This allows all parties involved to complete projects in a more timely, efficient, and coordinated manner, allowing the region's rail network to achieve a better level of service.
For more information about regional rail planning, please visit the web pages and contact information provided on the screen. Thank you.